Gurpatwant Singh Pannun of Sikhs For Justice has said on the record that he feels emboldened by the statement of the Canadian Prime Minister in the House of Commons. There is a sense of real fear. There is a recognition that they may be targeted, because what the Khalistani groups have always done from the beginning, when it started out in Punjab, is target the Hindu community. Ultimately, this is the perspective. There are a bunch of brown guys fighting among themselves. Why should we care about it? Which was essentially the main finding of a commission of inquiry which was set in place in the 2000s, which came up with its report in 2010. The Commissioner Justice John Major said it was not recognized as a Canadian tragedy.
The India-Canada diplomatic standoff has grabbed national and international headlines. But beyond the headlines, what is its larger impact on students or the diaspora living in Canada? What about the aspirants in India who were set on moving to Canada in pursuit of the Canadian dream? I have with me Anirudh Bhattacharya, HT's representative in Canada. Anirudh, what's the impact of this entire diplomatic row within the Indian community in Canada?
Well, I mean, there is obviously a lot of disappointment, and that's an understatement, for the simple reason that relations between the two countries appear to be on an upswing. In the very recent past, there was the potential that an early progress trade deal would be finalized. In fact, I'd heard that it was possible that it would be signed when Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau visited for the G20, but obviously that did not happen. So so there are parts of the community who actually want relations to be close, to be normalized, who are shell-shocked. I mean, there is no other word for it. There are students who are obviously extremely worried about their future because they have connections with India. Mm-hmm. The diaspora community has connections with India. Just about the only part of the diaspora community which is happy is probably the Khalistanis.
Or the Khalistani element. But I wonder why we call them Khalistanis, because Khalistan is not even a country. So why Khalistanis? They're just supporters of or proponents of Khalistan, so to speak. But let's talk about the tensions within the community, because you said there are these Khalistan proponents on one hand, and there are the peace-loving Sikhs who've been living there for generations altogether.
Right.
What's the buzz within the community there? Or are the Khalistani supporters emboldened now? Are they more visible now after this very public backing by Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they have actually used that exact word. Gurpatwant Singh Pannun of Sikhs For Justice has said on the record that he feels emboldened by the statement of the Canadian Prime Minister in the House of Commons that there are credible allegations about a potential link between Indian agents and the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. So yeah, they're obviously emboldened. They have held multiple events. They're having a car rally on the 21st of this month. They're going to have another phase of the so-called Khalistan referendum in Surrey, in British Columbia, on the 29th, and they'll continue because they feel encouraged, and that is a problem for 90% of the Indian community there, because for them it's an extreme disappointment. There are logistical problems that they may face in the future. Just traveling between the two countries is just one of them. That one of the things which concerns them, even though the Indian government has
reassured.
said that yeah, internationals or people with OCI cards are not going to be impacted. But then you also have a lot of people of Indian origin who move from India who don't actually have OCI cards. And those will be issued, but then if they need to travel in an emergency, there are issues there. As I said, do the parents of prospective students who want to go and study in Canada, do they feel comfortable sending their children to study there now? So those are there are various aspects to this particular breakdown in the relationship.
I have a few friends myself who are from India, and of course now they're residing in Canada. They've got permanent residency there, and so on and so forth. But this threat by Pannun, you said that he's emboldened. He sent out this recorded video message to a whole bunch of people saying Hindus must leave Canada now. And you said that 90% of the people don't empathize with these Khalistanis. 90% of the Indo-Canadian population doesn't sympathize with this 10%, which is creating all this ruckus. Then how about after this video has come out of Pannun, how has that impacted this 90% of the community?
It's definitely impacted them in the sense that there is a sense of real fear. There is a recognition that they may be targeted, because what the Khalistani groups have always done from the beginning, when it started out in Punjab, is target the Hindu community, and that's historic. It's happened in Canada with the bombing of the Kanishka, the Air India flight in 1985. There, and at the same time, it's also maybe getting them to realize they need to get organized as well. They need to get organized socially. They need to get organized to the temples, and they need to get political influence. That's the thing which matters, which is what the pro-Khalistan elements have, and which is what they leverage to put pressure on the government.
Interesting that you talked about the Air India bombings and the political leverage that these pro-Khalistan elements have in the same breath. And so that's where I want to. You talked about the Air India bombings, the 1980s Air India bombings. What explains? Nothing much has sort of come out of it from what we hear. What explains this very soft stance towards terrorism within Canada?
Well, there are various types of terrorists, as we say, good terrorists and bad terrorists.
There are. Okay.
Yeah, whatever. So ultimately, this is the perspective. There are a bunch of brown guys fighting among themselves. Why should we care about it? Which was essentially the main finding of a commission of inquiry which was set in place in the 2000s, which came up with its report in 2010. The Commissioner Justice John Major said it was not recognized as a Canadian tragedy, whereas it was a Canadian tragedy. Most of the people on the flight were Canadian citizens.
Exactly.
That tragedy, those circumstances are being played out again, and people don't realize that. This is something which could repeat itself. Unfortunately, it is repeating itself. I mean, to me, it appears farcical, but it's real and it is dangerous.
Which perhaps explains why Nijjar has been described as a plumber, as a priest, as a religious man, respectively, and time and again by various Canadian authorities, when time and again Indian intelligence agencies have sent dossiers on Nijjar to the Canadian intelligence. Why is this playing down of his terrorist avatar in Canadian circles? It's just again because of this brown man fighting brown man. Why should we care?
If you look at the history of Nijjar's immigration to Canada, and there are so many red flags there, it's incredible that he actually got citizenship. So that is one thing. The second thing, of course, is the Canadian government had put him on a no-fly list. Do you put a completely innocent person on a no-fly list? And why was he put on the no-fly list? I have to say this. Under Canadian law, he has never been prosecuted. Nothing has been proven against him in a Canadian court. So they cannot consider him a terrorist till that actually happened.
But there's no political will to convict him, is that?
Well, I mean, and he was also in a very significant position. I mean, he was the head of an important Gurdwara in the Metro Vancouver area and an influential Gurdwara. So
You mean politically influential?
Politically influential as well. Absolutely, even though they are not supposed to be involved in politics, but definitely, I mean, you don't go after people like that. So that's those are the circumstances that you face, and Nijjar is not considered a terrorist by the Canadian authorities.
Okay, it sounds all sounds very very dangerous, and you are viewers. Anirudh is due back in Canada sometime soon, so all the best and stay safe. That's all I can suggest. Given the way this Justin Trudeau government is going, and it's this very soft stance towards terror. It came back to bite Pakistan with the TTP, and this Khalistani bogey may just come back to bite Canada in the years to come. But thank you so much for watching this broadcast. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in. Thank you, Anirudh, for your time.
Thanks
Stay
so much.
tuned. We'll come back to you with more.